Rick Clunn could be the real greatest of all time in bass fishing, the GOAT. If you don't know his history, you have to stop this podcast right now and Google him before you listen to the rest. He's won everything there is to win. And even though he started in the sport in 1974, almost 50 years ago, he's still winning. He won a Bassmaster Elite Series event in 2019 on the St. Johns River in Florida, and it was one of the most inspiring things I've ever seen. Rick is also one of my very best friends in life. I've been very close with him and his wife, Melissa, for over 25 years, and their friendship is one of the most important in my life. When we're together, we don't make a lot of small talk. We usually go right in for the big stuff, the important stuff. Rick is a philosopher, a mastermind, and a very nuanced human. He's also a consummate student of the sport of fishing. He has a very deep knowledge of the sport, maybe deeper than anybody else out there. He's known for his mental toughness, and today we're going to talk to Rick about how developing mental toughness can help you in business. Are you ready for this? Here we go, y'all. Rick Clunn, it is actually a pleasure, absolutely a pleasure to have you and an honor to have you with us here today. You're one of the most well-known and the most written about people in the whole sport of fishing, and you've accomplished everything there is to accomplish, it seems like. But what are you most proud of accomplishing in your life?
Well, it's most of the time what we're most proud of is what we think we've been the best at, and obviously in my identity of myself and as an angler, that's what I've achieved the most success at. And I'm definitely proud of that. But it's really not the honors and the awards as much as, yeah, they play a role. Don't get me wrong, your ego loves those things. And it is a recognition of what you've worked very hard to achieve. But it's really in the long run, in my fishing world or my life, it's been really maintaining credibility. There's all kinds of people in fishing. You got salespeople, you got con artists, it's just like any industry. It's not unique in that respect. But the fact that I've really worked hard not to be a con artist and to do things in an ethical way. And I get recognized even now from my fans and from industry, those qualities, and they're actually more important than, hey, you won this big tournament. But it also, there's things I'm least proud of, and one of those is that any person who's successful in life has to commit pretty much 90% of his energy to achieve that success, and that means the people around him, he's making great sacrifices and things. And they're the ones that are making the sacrifices. And so the last 20 years, I realized that even though I was one of the best anglers in the world, did that translate over into what other people see you as, a father, a husband, a friend? And I realized no, and so that's what I really am the least proud of, but I don't mean to exaggerate that, but that's what I've tried to work harder on the last 20 years.
Well, one of the things that I admire about you the most, Rick, is that you never stop trying to learn, and that's something that you and I've talked a lot about over the years. How do you stay excited about fishing and learning new things about fishing after all these years?
Well, and fishing kind of does that naturally because there's no absolutes in it, and to continue to grow and or if you're a competitor, to compete, you have to keep learning because it's not a static universe. Fishing, it's constantly evolving, and I've seen it grow in many ways and change in many ways, and to maintain that learning edge, you've got to keep your mind open, and success sometimes can be your worst enemy because all of a sudden you lock to whatever that got you that success, and that's only temporary. That doesn't mean that'll translate into a year from now, 10 years from now, success, and we're learning that now. This sport's really changed a lot.
Yeah, no kidding. What do you think is the main thing that you've seen? If you had to drill down, because I know there's a lot of changes, but if you had to drill down to one thing that has changed the most about the sport, what would you say it was?
Well, really the thing that I've seen from my early days was that we were really still in the pioneering stages. We were the guy with the machete cutting his way through the jungle, and it was a tough deal. And of course, everybody that comes behind you, there's a little path that you cut through, and they may make it wider. But the knowledge that's available is number one. That's available to someone who wants to get into fishing, whether it's competitively or recreationally. The knowledge that's available right now is quantum amount versus what it was back then. And let me add quality knowledge versus theory back then that we weren't sure was right or wrong. And then of course you add the electronics to that and how much that's added to the sport. And you can see it now, especially with the young anglers. It's made it in a lot of ways a lot easier for them to get a level of performance at a high level so much faster than you ever could back in the old trial and error days.
Right. So when you say the knowledge that's available, are you talking about research and science because just technologically in general we've advanced, or is it because there's more opportunity to share your personal knowledge as anglers with each other that helps sort of elevate everybody's knowledge?
Well, the old knowledge came from just a few small sources, and that knowledge was mostly theory. And theory didn't always match up with reality. Back when I was there, you had a few guys like Homer Circle and Jason Lucas who were the so-called experts, but still they wrote about a lot of different things, and so they weren't really specialists. And so a lot of what they were trying to promote and teach and write about was theory. What tournament fishing has done, even though a lot of people resent tournament fishing even to this day, is that it translated theory into reality. And so when you sit there on film now, on a show, a TV show, or on the internet, and you're watching a guy actually do it, you're seeing reality. You're not hearing him on a blank stage or in an article talking the theory of fishing. You're seeing the real world.
Yeah, that's incredible. You're right. That's just incredible. Okay, we're going to take a break here in just a minute, but before we go, Rick, what's something about you that most people don't know? Like I said, you're one of the most written about guys in the sport, but is there something about you that most people don't know?
And I'm going to keep that a secret.
Okay.
There's a lot of that I don't know that, is best kept secret, probably.
It's good to have secrets, I think, going back to what you were just saying about the knowledge. We all know so much about everything. Sometimes it's good to have secrets, and sometimes it's good just to believe in magic, isn't it?
You nailed it. Now, you know me too well. I believe in magic, and that's probably one of my greatest secrets, and we tend to lose that the older we get. And of course, then we'd have to define magic, which is a whole different thing. But there's so much magic that occurs in the natural world, and that's why I still believe in it. And fishing allows me to maintain that connection to that magic.
All right, we got magic coming up here with Rick Clunn on the Fishing Business Podcast. We'll be right back. Hey, if you're enjoying this podcast, check out fishingbusinessschool.com, where you can see video uploads of the podcast, as well as my blog, where I give you more practical advice on the business side of fishing. fishingbusinessschool.com. Come see me over there. All right, we're back on the Fishing Business Podcast. Rick Clunn is our guest today. An old friend of mine, great angler, and one of the best guys in the sport. Rick, I'm very impressed with how good you've become at social media, because I know you weren't comfortable with it at the beginning very much. So what was your approach to getting better at it, and how do you view social media as part of your job as a professional angler?
Well, earlier we talked about some of the major changes in fishing, and probably from the angler's perspective, there's never been a greater positive tool for us to have when trying to measure our worth in the eyes of the industry and sponsors than social media. Before then, it was a guessing game, and the industry did not know how to put, you know, a dollar on what an angler's exposure was worth. But now social media, because everything seems in the old TV days worked off impressions, and social media has now allowed the anglers to really give real numbers to those impressions. I'm still not real good at it. I still look at it as a double-edged sword, and that there's great value in it, but there's great danger in it. And I think that's really where you have to really be careful how you use it.
What do you see as the danger?
Credibility, integrity, overexposure. I mean, even some of the best people, and I've learned this kind of in the last situation. Some of the best people you see on TV, once I start seeing too much of them, I don't want to see any more of them. And because all of a sudden, you can't maintain an authentic character, but it's for a certain length of time. And then people, it's the old, and to use it, it's the old, you need a little separation so the absence makes the heart grow fonder. But the social media is like 24-hour news. We're sick of it,
yes.
Okay? And we're sick, even sports now is 24 hours, and I get sick of listening to these so-called experts yell at you like used car salesmen. So I'm trying to find the right balance in my use of it, that I give good information, but I don't turn into a used car salesman.
Well, I don't think you could ever be perceived as a used car salesman, Rick. But I do find that your social media I really appreciate because it is measured, and I mean it is measured. When I say measured, I mean you think about what you're going to post. You're not just out there every day saying, "Here's me shaving this morning." And when you do post, it really gets my attention because I think, oh, Rick's got something to say. And when Rick has something to say, I really want to listen to it.
And that's pretty much really what it is. You have to maintain, you know, that credibility, and I will use that word over and over probably in our conversation. But it's something that's difficult to do in today's times.
Yes. And, you know, that circles me back to what we talked about at the beginning about learning in the sport of fishing. And you learned how to do social media well, the Rick Clunn way. You learned how to do it the Rick Clunn way. It sounds really, trite to say this, but why is it important for you to keep learning at this stage in your life?
Why I think part of the life is dictated by, and the quality of it is dictated by continuing to add to it, and continuing to grow, and again, we live in a dynamic universe, and all of a sudden it's we always say, well, I'm just going to go home and lay around this weekend. I don't want to do nothing, or probably the greatest tragedy is the misunderstanding of retirement by people. All of a sudden we take this person out of the system. We take his contribution to society out of the little, if you look at it in terms of a little tribe, everybody in that tribe has to make a contribution. And otherwise, it eventually ceases to work because one or two people are taking care of everybody else. And there's no growth, and there's no, and it's just, to me, it's a philosophy that I've had for quite a while, is I should make a contribution to those around me until the day I die. Yes. I shouldn't back off from that. That's the way it should be. Yes.
And that's so important, and it's so important for people to hear that from you, because it improves the quality of everyone around you, the lives of everyone around you, and we all need to keep that in mind as we keep going down this path of life. Is that that's our job, right?
Well, it works at all levels. So, you know, whether it's you yourself growing, whether it's what you share with your friends, your family, what are the other people around you, what you share with the people that you work with, the relationships you have with people, you know, that you work with in the world, whether it's companies or the industries or, you know, fans, whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I want to get on to the meat of what I wanted to talk to you about today, and that's being mentally tough. Rick, I can remember a tournament years ago, and I can't really remember where we were. I think we were in Texas, and it was probably 20 years ago. And you were in contention on the last day, and on the night before, we all knew that the weather was going to be really bad the next day. And I remember talking to you at the anglers meeting and saying, "Golly, I'm so sorry the weather's going to be so bad tomorrow." And you said, "I'm glad the weather's going to be bad because that'll get in the heads of a lot of people and not me. I'm good when the weather's bad. I'm good when conditions are down. I'm good when the chips are down." And in my mind, that's really being mentally tough. And I think mental toughness is needed in the business side of this as well. But what does being mentally tough really mean?
Really, to me, it's just how do you handle positives and negatives. And then you just kind of said that using weather as an example. It's just it's our response to positives and negatives, and where you learn mental toughness comes more often through failure. I learned that from my father and how he struggled in life and business, and but yet even if he failed, how hard he would get up and work the next day, and that he would never quit, and he would learn from it. And so, to me, you know, you don't learn a lot from your successes. I'm not going to say you don't learn anything, but it's the way you respond to failure, to me, that really makes you mentally tough. It's one of the things I've always told. I've been asked often in my life, "Do you think my son will be a good fisherman? You know him, you've been around him, you've watched him fish." And I'm looking at his parents, and I go, I can't answer that for you. I said, there's only one way I can tell you is I can look at his passion. I can judge his passion right now, and yes, he's very passionate about what he's doing. He's very passionate about fishing. But I want to see how passionate it is when he hits rock bottom. That's the only time I can tell when somebody I can say, yeah, they'll make it, because that passion does not erode or go away when they're at rock bottom, when they're at their lowest level. And so often when a person gets to that point, that passion disappears. So I think that's the mental toughness, and I think what controls that is your love or passion for something that will not allow you to give up, will not allow you to quit, will make you find out how to make it happen.
Gosh, that is just so dead on the money of what I'm trying to communicate to people on the business side of things. And I know that you realize, Rick, that mental toughness applies to so many things, not just sports and competition, but you know, your personal life and your spiritual life and everything. And I think it really does apply in business. You know, I've been in so many places where I didn't think I was going to succeed. And I, you know, it's what my dad used to call, I was hard-headed. You know, he used to call it hard-headedness. But I do think a little bit of it is mental toughness on the business side of saying, okay, that didn't work, but I'm not giving up. I'm going to figure out how to make it work.
No, we rarely succeed the first time, and like you said, it's just a commitment to something, and really what gives you that commitment is how bad do you want it?
Yeah. So my next question was, you know, how do you cultivate mental toughness? Can you get better at it? It sounds like you can't. I don't know. Can you?
That is a tough question because if we put passion back into that equation, that means you have to be chasing a dream that you love. can you be mentally tough in the long run if you're actually doing something that you don't love to do? And that we see a lot. And that, so I would say my mental toughness would be easier because I was chasing something I really wanted and really loved. Whereas you have a lot of people in the world right now who hadn't found that.
Right.
And they should keep searching for it. It's okay if you don't find it, okay? What's not okay if you quit searching for it.
Yeah.
And so those people have a different type of mental toughness that they have to maintain until they, it's easier if you're me and you found what you love to do. Okay, I'm gonna say I had it easier, even though it's never easy. So yeah, it's just, again, the person who doesn't quit searching for it. Don't quit looking for it. I don't care if you're 60 years old, keep looking.
Well, and maybe, Rick, being a way to cultivate mental toughness. I'm just trying to think of situations in my past is, you are disappointed by something or you're struggling at something, and you have to find the wherewithal to dig deep and find your reason to keep going, or find your reason to overcome the disappointment or the frustration or the setback.
No, I mean, it's true. I mean, and again, you asked me earlier what I love about fishing, or why I keep learning, and that's one of the things. It's a great teacher. You got to find those things in life that teach you that to keep doing that, to keep looking. Man, I got to figure this out. And every day you go on the water and fishing, you got to figure it out. There's no perfect model that you can say, hey, okay, I know tomorrow I'm going to go out there and I'm going to follow A, B, C, D, E, F, G. No, you every day it's going to be different. And every day you're going to be challenged in a different way, but you're going to have to figure it out.
That's right. And sometimes, and it is the same on the business side. You have to figure out how to package yourself, and figure out how to find the right people who are looking for what you offer. And another thing in my mind that makes the business side of fishing similar to the actual sport of fishing is that when I was in sales at Bass, one of the things that I loved so much was that any day, if I was on my game, any day, my life could change. I would wake up in the morning thinking, my life could change today. I could get that call of a project that I've been pitching or trying to work on, or trying to land a new client, and it could come today. And it could mean a significant change for me, because it could mean a significant change for our sport. And that was always really kind of a driving force for me, which is similar to competitive fishing, don't you think? In that you think, this could be the day, this could be the tournament I win.
Well, and everything is parallel. I've met many successful people in my life, especially back when I was guiding. I'd have corporate, presidents and CEOs hire me as a guide, and I've fished with world-class athletes, and I've fished with presidents of the United States. Their secrets to success run parallel in everything we do in life. And it's just that commitment, that positive attitude. And the problem with that is we hear it so much it becomes cliche. And yet it's really the keys to every one of those people. And the other one is, is that we heard, and who we heard it from as much as anybody, is you have to put the right people on the bus with you.
Yeah.
And so you surround yourself with those people. And if you're approaching like you do those people, you have to make them look good. You have to give them a reason to say, wow, that's going to make my job easier. That's going to help what I'm doing. That's going to make my business better. So we're all there. We're supposed to be helping each other, and that doesn't matter what relationship that is.
Right. Do you think about that with your longtime partners and sponsors of, I need to, here's an opportunity I have that I can make them look better. I can help them not look better, but I can help them with their goals.
Mine is the best ones I've ever had. We have to like each other. That's
Yeah.
and so that means you have to build a relationship where you trust each other and you like each other and you're honest with each other, and sometimes honesty means telling them something they don't want to hear. Every company I work with, I owe them my opinion. Whether they agree with it or not, I owe them my best opinion, because otherwise I'm not doing justice to why I'm there for them. And so the number one thing with the sponsors to me is developing communication, relationships, and if you like each other, both of you are looking out to try to make that other person's life better.
Right. Absolutely. And that leads me to an interesting part of the conversation for me, Rick, is, I'm going to be doing a podcast with our mutual friend, Bobby Dennis, here in a couple of weeks. Bobby's a lure designer that you've worked with for a long time. And I know it's very important to you, the stuff that you put your name on in the sport. But how important is that part of the sport as a professional angler and doing lure design or having a signature line of baits? How important is that to a career of a professional angler?
That's really going to be different from angler to angler, because it depends on what your strengths are and what you're known for. I can point out more what we do wrong in those areas than what we do right. The industry really does not do a good job in that area, and I'm talking about the companies, and I'm talking about the media part of the companies are real guilty of this, is that they put a young angler in an awkward position and try to make him the most credible person about this technique, and yet that technique has been around 50 years.
Yeah.
Now, if he's added something, so immediately if I'm a reader, that article has no credibility, and I see that so common in the big fishing magazines nowadays. They put a young angler into a situation that's not fair to him, or they hire him. And let's say hypothetically, I'm a crankbait company and I hire him, and he only fishes the crankbait 10% of every day he's on the water every year. You're putting him in a position he cannot represent you correctly. You should hire somebody that's going to use your bait at least 75% of every time he's on the water. That's going to create more credibility. That's going to create more opportunities for him to get your product in front of the public. And so the industry's been real poor at that. And the fisherman, of course, as a young angler, you go, yeah, you're just praying somebody to offer you something, and you don't always evaluate it from the long-term perspective. My philosophy has always been, performance before form. In other words, that bait has to perform. Good sales people out there, and we know a lot of them, me and you in the fishing industry, can sell one bait, any kind of bait, one time, but can they sell it twice? And
Right.
the only thing that sells it twice is that person has success with it and it performs for them. So that's the number one thing for me. One of the best baits I ever designed, Lynn Reeves of Bass Pro approached me to design a square bill. I didn't originate a square bill, but I had success with it for over 20 years. And I got recognized for that success, and I started, trying to improve the product. And that's what you can do as a young angler. If you can add an improvement to it that nobody else has added, a way of using it that nobody else has used, then promote that. Don't necessarily make yourself a complete expert on that subject matter. So it's complex.
It is very complex. I wonder sometimes if, there's a sort of a rush in the marketing world towards younger pros and I understand it from a marketing standpoint. If you attract a younger audience, you have a longer life with that audience, right? Or a younger consumer. If you attract a consumer when he's 18 years old and he becomes brand loyal to you, you've got him for 40 years of his prime spending time. But in that philosophy of we want to reach that younger guy, so we're going to put younger faces in front of them. You may be right in that you're doing a disservice to both the customer and the angler.
Well, you are, because we underestimate the knowledge of our fans. And that's what I've noticed. I can't tell you how many times I'll sit out in the audience when I haven't done well, because I like to watch the final weigh-in. And I'm sitting there listening to the fan that's looking up at the stage, and he says, watch what he's fixing to say. And he will say verbatim what that guy's going to say before he even says it himself, because he's heard it so many times that it's just a sales pitch.
Right.
And immediately he has no credibility toward what that guy just said. And now used to, they would go, and this is why I even talk to sponsors about, hey, that patch on your shirt, it may not be doing you a good service. Because I've set up there and they'll go, see, look at his patches on his shirt. He's going to start talking about them when they ask him how he won the tournament. And sure enough, he does. Okay? Where if you didn't have those patches on your shirts, they would have to kind of, take your word for, okay. In other words, again, it's credibility.
Right.
In the old days, I got in a lot of trouble because I would actually mention another sponsor's bait, but that gave me credibility, even though it pissed off my sponsor.
Exactly.
But, at least briefly, at least the guys out there in that audience would go, hey, I believe what he said, because that's not even one of his sponsors. So the next time you do mention one of your sponsors, they're more likely to believe you as well.
Agreed. We used to struggle with that a lot, a long time ago, 20 years ago, when we first started covering professional fishing, and guys would get up on the stage and try to mention every single sponsor they had. And we would try to coach them and really try to, encourage them to tell good stories rather than just rattling off a list of sponsors, and that was more valuable to the viewer, and in the end, more valuable to the sponsors than just rattling off a list.
Yeah, we always had this internal joke that we need to get fatter so we can put more patches on our shirts and have a bigger shirt.
Well, I do, and listen, I do want to circle back to one thing that you said there, which is when you said we know a lot of salesmen in this industry that could sell a bait one time, but can they sell it twice? Well, the same thing is true on the media and business side of it. You and I both know some people on that side of things that can sell their tournament series or their TV show or their magazine. They can sell it once, but can they bring that same advertiser or sponsor back again to renew? And renewing is so important, and delivering what you said you would do is so important, that I think that's a really key takeaway for everybody listening out there is, on the sales side of things, if you sell something, you need to be prepared to deliver what you sold and then some, so that the guy not only wants to buy again, but he wants to upgrade the deal when he buys again.
Well, there's no doubt. I was talking about a lure earlier. The most important thing is performance.
Right.
What you sell that person, they have to get in return. You have to perform. You have to give them what they were expecting, and hopefully a little bit more.
It is exactly the same. Rick, you've had long collaborative relationships with several big brands and some of your partners. What advice would you give young pros on how to manage those kinds of relationships where they are delivering what they said? They are performing, not performing in a tournament and winning, finishing in the top 10 X amount of times, but performing in their relationship and what they said they would do.
Well, it boils down to, and over the years I've seen, some guys who were they were immaculately dressed. They were every hair on their head was in the right place. Their boats didn't have a single piece of dirt on them. They were immaculate about everything. And that looks good to the sponsor, especially in the short term, and you should be aware of that. But in the long run, again, it boiled down to how much how performance is what got you the press coverage, and that's what the sponsor wants. I remember fishing one of the earlier circuits where I wasn't really in there. One of the big sponsors go, why don't any of us get to sponsor you? Because you're in the top, you're in the TV time more than anybody else, and yet we none of us are we're sponsoring guys that never get TV time. So the bottom line, again, is just what you've been talking about. It is performance.
Rick, I know you have a lot of relationships with young guys that you try to mentor. You didn't really have any kind of mentors when you were coming along, did you? In terms of the business side and managing all of those things, because it's complicated. Not only is the sport complicated, but the business part of it is complicated too. And when you were getting started, you didn't have anybody to kind of show you the ropes, did you?
No, not really. There was a few guys that unknown names that would mentor me in the fishing side of it, but not in the business side of it, because the anglers really were trying. That was a jungle, just like hacking your way through the fishing world. You know, we were in the jungle. We were trying to hack our way through, and vice versa. The industry didn't know what the heck to do with us.
Yeah.
We were new. They didn't know if we were good or bad, and they didn't know how to use us. And in a lot of ways, that's still very unfortunately true. The industry still doesn't really understand how to use a professional in their best way. And so, is that their fault? No, it's the angler's fault to try to educate them on that, try to help them. You know, they don't know what your strengths are. They don't know what your long-term goals are. So that's, again, where that communication and that early relationship plays a huge role. And early on, no, it was, I mean, nobody knew what they were doing. I think some of the TV guys figured it out, like Bill Dance and Jimmy Houston, and they realized that they just want exposure. They want to see when their bait goes on that camera and their sales goes up, hey, that was the only data that meant anything to them.
Yeah. But I think that some of that's changed too. You know, I think that, you know, I remember in the 90s, there was a guy that worked for, I think it was Pradco. It might not have been Pradco, might not have been called Pradco back then, but I remember him saying, if Bill Dance uses a lure on Saturday, on Sunday, we'll sell out at Walmart. And I don't know, I think that's changed a little bit too, don't you?
Well, it has, because really, again, the early TV shows, we didn't know if we were, you know, we didn't know how legit they were. And as an angler, again, some of those guys had the ability to put a cow patty, dried up cow patty, put hooks on it and sell it, okay? but they weren't going to sell it again. And they did too much of that in some of the early TV shows, where they were just pushing product that really did not live up to what they said it would do. And that catches up with you. That's why, again, you know, it's the old saying, you know, one mistake can erase 10 good things. And so this industry is that's very true.
Right.
And that's why you have to be guarded about who represents you and how you're represented, but most importantly, how you represent yourself.
You know what I really appreciate about this conversation, Rick, is that really what you're talking about here, and the sort of the overarching theme of the whole conversation, circles all the way back to the very first thing we talked about, which was when I asked you what you were most proud of, and it's your integrity. And every little bit of advice that you've given out here today has really, underneath it, has had maintain your integrity. And I think that's a incredibly important thing, and you are the right person to talk about that. We're going to take a break here in just a minute, Rick, but is there anything so far, is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't asked you? You've been interviewed a million times. Is there anything you've always wished somebody would talk about and that they haven't?
No, not that the audience would want to hear us talk about.
Okay, gotcha. All right, we're going to take a break here. We'll be right back with Rick Clunn on the Fishing Business Podcast. I really want to hear from you to know what kind of questions you have and how I can serve you best in this podcast. The easiest place to reach me is probably at Facebook or Instagram, where you can find me as Fishing Business Podcast, or on YouTube, but you'll have to search for me there by typing in Fishing Business Podcast. Holla! All right, Rick, before we go here, I got a couple of quick questions to ask you, just kind of rapid fire. What's the last great book you read?
It's been a long time ago because I went through that stage of where I was seeking enlightenment, seeking knowledge. There was a lot of things happening in fishing which went beyond my rational mind. I read a quote from Einstein who said, you know, all of my greatest theories about physics and the theories of relativity did not come from my rational mind. And I was experiencing the same thing in fishing. And so I started I never read a book in my whole life until then. And I started, you know, I was in the San Francisco airport and this book fell out at my feet, and it's called Magic of Your Mind by U.S. Anderson. And anyway, I read it and it fascinated me, and I went from all the great religions of the world to all the enlightening books and all the the books on, you know, enlightenment and knowledge, but eventually I got to a point and that I finally realized I had to quit reading anymore and start trying to implement those things in your life. They're of no value if you just read them and you can't implement some of the great things you learn from them. And so really, to answer that question, I would say it's right now the books that I still look at and still, you know, infect me more than anything else. Probably one of them is Joseph Campbell's The Power of the Myth. The other one would be probably Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's probably still, I read it over and over and over because it just so applies to how what you have to put in your life and what you have to try to become more, you know, of that type of person. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but if you have young people in your life, how important that is for them to have self-value and self-worth and be self-reliant. And of course, my favorite all-time book, and I still quote it more than most people want to hear, is Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Yeah.
Because it was such a simple book, but it applies to everything. And it gets me in trouble when I was trying to use it in some of my talks, and because it challenges some belief systems.
Yeah, I love that you included The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell in that. That's been an really important book to me throughout my whole life, and I've read it, you know, at different times in my life, and I've gotten different things out of it. And I read it this past winter when I was, you know, having a really, really hard time. And it, man, it's timeless. And no matter how many times you read it, it seems like you get something new out of it.
Well, he's kind of like Will Rogers. He could talk about anything and take the opposite side on everything and yet not offend you. Yeah. You know, so I'm not good at that. I will usually if I take the opposite side, I'll usually offend the person I did that with.
Okay, what's your best road trip you love the best, Rick?
You know me enough to know that it was a Christmas years ago, which I just got so sick of watching the materialism of Christmas that I decided I was finished with it. And I started really giving my family adventures because I couldn't remember any present I'd ever got, but I could remember the adventures my family had taken me on, camping and hunting and that kind of thing. And probably there's three, I'm not going to give you one. Probably the first adventure I did, we rafted, me and my daughters, the full length of the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
It's something that will always be there. And then with Melissa and my boys, we went whale watching out in Monterey Bay, California. And probably the most recent one was a trip I'll never forget to Wyoming.
Ah, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so your favorite way to spend a day off? I bet I know the answer to this, but I want to hear it.
Yeah, it's my favorite way to spend the day is a place would be where I'm at right now, is when you're really trying to escape from the rest of the world, and that's why I guess we created this. It's a sanctuary. It's a sanctuary from the rest of the world, and yet I'm still surrounded by the thing that's neatest, most important to me, and that's family and nature itself. I moved here because I knew we were going to have a son, And I knew I could not teach that son what living here would teach him, and provide for him. And that's, again, my greatest love of fishing. It's just a vehicle that keeps me connected to the most important thing there is, and that's nature. And nature is, when I'm in it, is when I believe most in God. You take me away from it and I start to wonder. Yeah. But when I'm in nature, no, I feel it. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to see it, but I feel it. So that, that's where is right where I'm sitting right now, and is probably where I'm most like to be on the days that I'm not doing something else. I don't want to ever have a day off. This latest deal of COVID, I don't want to ever have another day off. Okay, I've had too many day offs the last month or two.
Rick, I don't remember exactly when it was, but I think it was in the 90s, late 90s. I remember you calling me one time and saying, I want to buy a piece of property in Missouri, and if you hear of anything, and the only thing I really require is I want it to have water on it. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, no, it was because I said either Missouri or northern Arkansas, the Ozarks.
In the Ozarks. Yep, and there you are in Missouri, in the Ozarks, in Missouri, and I know where you're sitting, and I know what you're looking at. And on the days when I don't say this to all of my guests, but I love you dearly, and I love your wife dearly, and y'all are really, really important to me. And on days when I think about you, and I imagine y'all either on your side by side or your four wheeler or hiking and or down on the creek. And it makes me happy to think of you up there because it makes me think everything's going to be okay in the world.
Well, yeah, we're trying. That's all you can do.
Well, I want you to go now and enjoy that and enjoy the view and whatever you've got going on today. Rick, thank you so much for doing this for us. And I appreciate your integrity. I appreciate how good you are at so many things, and I really appreciate how gracious you are in sharing your knowledge, because not everybody does that, and I think it makes you one of a kind.
Well, Angie, and that's mutual, because you're the one that convinced me about social media. It seemed that you were way ahead of the curve 15, 20 years ago when you were telling me about it, and I go, what in the world is that girl talking about? And slowly but surely it has definitely, that's the world we've turned into.
Yeah. Well, and you use it for good, Rick. You do it right, and you use it for good things, and a lot of people don't. And so we're lucky that we can follow you on social media too and hear what you have to say. Thanks, Rick. We'll talk again soon, okay?
Bye, Angie.
Well, I hope you got as much value from that conversation as I did. Every time I talk to Rick, I feel like I learned something new, and I feel like I learned something important. 3 keys from this conversation from me. Number 1, have integrity in everything you do, in your words and in your deeds. Integrity will take you a long way in this sport and in life. 2, keep a positive attitude. And that sometimes means taking a hard look at the people around you. What do you spend your time thinking about and talking about with the people around you? Is it big dreams, goals, how to learn, be a better person, just like Rick does? If not, you might need to think about changing the people around you. And 3rd, work on developing mental toughness. And as we learned today, most of the time that means not giving up. You don't give up on the water, you don't give up on the business side of fishing. If you experience a disappointment or a setback, you dig deep and you find the reason, whatever it is deep inside of you, that'll make you keep going, learn from it, and achieve success. That's it this week for us on the Fishing Business Podcast. Come see me over at fishingbusinessschool.com, and you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook as Fishing Business Podcast. Please share this episode if you found something in it that you thought was good. If you have friends that you think could benefit from listening to it. It's really important to help me keep going and keep bringing you conversations like this every week. Like I said, that's it. We'll be back next week on the Fishing Business Podcast. But before I go, I'm going to sign off the way my favorite fisherman always did on the fishing hole. Jerry McInnes always said, "This is dedicated to Dad," because he always had time to take me fishing. See you next week, y'all.